Welcome back to the Combo Couch, fam.
You're so ridiculous, fam.
Is your microphone on? Because you sound a little echoey.
It should be working.
And fam, please refer to me as Pastoro.
Pastro. Not to be confused with Castro. Yeah, no, it should be working.
Well, we are both, newspaper guys, fam.
Yeah, fam, but you picked the New York Times. Oh, that's what.
Because one needs to understand the propaganda that's out there against the state, so one can fight the propaganda against the state.
Yeah, but you should read something else. All right.
Well, hold on, I got something for you. Over here, fam. This is right here. Ah! See this right here?
Is that my book?
This is the book I got you.
Can you read it, fam?
Of course I can, but we got a lot of stuff to cover, so I don't want to. You know what I'm saying? But it's got some great pictures in here too, though. Actually, the guy who had a lot of these books was very, very proud and of what he had, and a lot of the books. He's got some awesome pictures in here.
What guy?
Just a vendor on the street who had a lot of books from the Revolution.
Oh.
It's very interesting, fam. I don't know if you're gonna be 100% upon board what we saw and what we witnessed and stuff, but it's still, there's only so much you can find out in a couple days and whatnot. So, having doing our homework going in, fam, look at all these beautiful fucking pictures and shit during the Revolution. Just amazing shit. You're gonna love this book. Wyatt was gonna buy it, but it was just too big, so he bought a smaller book.
Wyatt was gonna buy it.
Yeah, he was.
Nice.
But it was like so big to take in his baggage that he couldn't do it, fam. And see this here? This is the local cigars you buy on the streets from some of the people in Havana. Like you can buy like the Cohibas and the Monte Cristos, and they're expensive. You can buy them on the black market, they're a little bit cheaper, but then you don't know if they're like hand-me-downs or whatnot. These are like so cheap. These are literally like 80 cents each. And I love these better than the high-end cigars. And we found you a couple chess games when you go back.
Chess?
Oh yeah, they were playing dominoes in the street, and they wanted us to come back and play. They wanted Wyatt to come back and play chess. And I was talking to Wyatt about your chess game, So I said how solid it was. I said you only beat me once, but we've only played twice, and the second time the board got messed up. So I'm going to make a confession right now, ladies and gentlemen. I messed up the board because I knew I was going to lose in like 5 moves to Fee. She had me trapped. But, I mean, her chess game is very much like her dating life. She brings you on in, and you think you're going on in, and you get all, aggressive, and then she sinks the teeth into you when you make a mistake and miss a move.
I love how Pasta thinks he knows so much about my dating life.
Fam, I've worked with you longer than I've worked with anybody in my entire life. I think I know you. You like the sombrero though, or no?
It's very, white man goes to Cuba, but it suits you.
Dude, I saw Cuban men wearing this one. What are you talking about? I went on the streets to get I didn't go into like the other place. I went to.
It's fine, fam.
I'm just every time, instead of saying anything, I'm not gonna get excited. I'm just gonna go and do that. And that's my way of going, back off, girlfriend.
Oh, fam. Jeez.
And what do you think about this, fam? My first Cuban haircut. I said that, give me the classic Cuban haircut. See?
That's classic Cuban haircut, really?
Well, what they did is he just left everything on top, and he just trimmed up and shaved everything nicely. So I did see a lot of people with hair like this. Sometimes they slick it back, sometimes they leave it curly. But since I have,
it suits you. It's not the Shea hat haircut, or it's definitely not the Fidel haircut, but it suits you.
It does suit me, and let's not forget, I am not worthy. I wouldn't go into a Cuban barber and say, "Give me a Che haircut." I'm a little respectful. You know what I'm saying? Even though, which we will talk when Wyatt gets here, what's going on in Cuba and what we discovered and what we sensed. You know what I'm saying? Um, like I said, at the end of the day, those people's hearts, they're strong, they're bold, they come together. It's a different society. There's a lot of things that we can look at and say, wow. But there's also a condition that they're in right now in this global economy that's going to be, it's going to have to take a little finagling and ways to get out of it. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot is going to fall on Diaz-Canal's shoulders and what he could possibly do. You know, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
I do
We'll wait
think
for when Wyatt gets here too. And you know, we want to be respectful enough. We want to go back in May. There's a lot more, you know, to do and see. And I think that for me personally, the conditions in the lifestyle in Cuba is so different than what we witnessed everywhere else. You know what I'm saying? It's just different. They have the nicest people in Cuba. They love Americans, and they're great. And you know that there's stories to be told. And it's a 40-minute plane ride from here, fam. Literally, the plane takes up, and before you know, you're landing. They do like they do water and snacks. Like you get up and they're running down the aisle giving water and snacks. But you know, at the end of the day, I think you said it before, and these are things that cannot be argued or debated. At the end of the day, the number one issue with Cuba getting on its feet is the fact that the United States has them ridiculously sanctioned, ridiculously slapped them with a state sponsor of terrorism, which is just beyond. But we will get to everything when Wyatt gets in, and we will kind of explain and talk about what was going on. So it is unique times, and it's going to take some unique situations. But I mean, holy shit, fam. With what's going on with our banking system, you know, the Saudis now, and we're going to talk about it. Do you want to do your section first? And we'll do, yeah, let's do your section.
Yeah, we can start. I'm sure, although White would probably have something to say about that section, but yeah, we can start with this
We'll
section.
jump on
This
in.
is kind of along the lines of everything that we've been talking about. The stream I did Monday talking about multipolarity and what's going on and where we're headed is pretty much continuing now with Brazil. And not that I'm going to throw this on people's faces, but there are a lot of people that have been saying a bunch of crap. And it's not even about Lula for me or about defending Lula. It's just about accuracy or the go-to. You know who I'm talking about. Oh, yes, Lula is a Biden Soros puppet. And that's the extent of the analysis. There's nothing else behind that. Well, Brazil is a huge country. It's the largest economy in Latin America. It is a huge part of BRICS. Brazil is going to do what Brazil needs to do to get it out of the ground that it's in with inflation, with the poverty, the way the situation is there, where people are stealing, where things are really bad. And ultimately, with Bolsonaro, the relationships with China and abroad in general were not good. And now, with the government shifting, there is also with the shifting of the greater global economy, Brazil is going to do what needs to be done. And it's not even about ideology as much as it is about necessity and just going where the wind is blowing, like economics wise. And Brazil, like I said, it's a huge country. Lula isn't the only one in charge. So it's not surprising to me what people are calling a shift, right? That we're seeing this shift. It's not surprising at all because Brazil needed to make a decision as to whether they were going, which way they were going to go. And it's not a surprise they're going this route. So, first of all, in regard to Russia, they were among two other countries, including Russia and China, to back this draft resolution that was establishing a commission to investigate the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. And it failed. It failed, but Brazil, China, and Russia were the only ones that voted in favor of this. Everybody else voted either against it or abstained. Now, there's a couple other things I want to say about that. But fam, I'm just going to go ahead and read it. If you can pull it up.
Right there.
So, the Security Council failed to adopt a resolution put forward by the representatives of the Russian Federation, which would have established an internal independent investigative commission into the September 2022 acts of sabotage committed on the Nord Stream gas pipeline in the Baltic Sea. Vote of 3 in favor: Brazil, China, Russian Federation, to none against, with 12 abstentions. I'm sorry, none against, 12 abstentions. And the council rejected the draft with a lack of sufficient votes in favor. And if it had been adopted, they would have established an independent investigation to conduct a comprehensive, transparent, and impartial international investigation of all aspects on this act of sabotage. And it would have relied on impartial and internationally respected experts selected by the Secretary General, and be furnished with an adequate number of experienced and impartial staff. So, a couple things on this. The fact that it failed, that most UN Security Council members abstained, really shows you where the UN's at. This is why I'm not a fan. This is why I believe the UN has whitewashed and pretty much been this milquetoast organization that does whatever the bidding of the West, particularly led by the US, wants. This is why I think just it's completely useless. Like, it's good in terms of like symbolism, but that's really all it is. And I disagree with the Russian Federation, with China, and with all these countries that have been so pretty much patient with it and have been giving it this status of respect, because I think at a certain point you do have to come to terms with what it actually has done and what it is, and really call it out for what it is, and stop with these hoity-toity levels of just symbolic bullshit when they really have done a huge damage by completely looking the other way when the West does what it wants. And they haven't held any accountability. So
I do think that, though, it does something. It kind of creates a paper trail of actual positions. In other words, you can say, look, I went to the Security Council, we went to the United Nations, we voted on this, we put this on paper, we put our point of view out there, we put our decisions out there, and they were rejected. So, down the road, you can say, well, why didn't you go to the UN? Well, I have a paper trail of going to the UN time and time again, and we're seeing it's just a vessel of the West, so why should we continue to listen to the UN? But I do like the fact that they go and they make these votes. That's something I always thought that was good about Putin. And what I saw in the interview with Oliver Stone is the fact that he does like to work through the international community, because therefore it's known. You can't go back and say, well, he didn't do this or do that, or he didn't make his intentions known, or he was signaling for something out. No, it's in black and white. A vote is down. You're the ones who rejected not to go along with it. You're the ones who had your puppets go the other way and always vote with you. It creates a paper trail, and or a vote trail, or it puts things officially on paper, so it could be used for or against you in the future. And that's what I do like about it. Even though I agree, fam, 1,000%. I think they know by now that it's nothing more than a sham.
Yeah, and I agree that it's good to go through it. I just don't think you need to laud it with anything more than what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So the next thing I want to talk about is who actually co-authored the resolution, because this is also important, and that's on the TASS.com, fam. TASS.com.
The next one? Sure.
Yeah, the next link. So the resolution was actually co-authored by Belarus, Venezuela, the Democratic Republic of North Korea, or the DPRK, Nicaragua, Syria, and Eritrea. But these states are not members of the Security Council. So they did not take part in the vote. So if you were wondering why the co-authors of these states did not vote in favor, it's because they're not a part of the Security Council. They're not members. So just to show you, and look at those countries: Venezuela, North Korea, Nicaragua, Syria, Eritrea, and Belarus. So it makes sense. And why is Brazil doing this? Why is Brazil also speaking out against the attacks on Syria? Why is Brazil, this is so surprising? It's not surprising. Again, Brazil is a member of BRICS, and BRICS is rising right now. And I'm not saying that because it sounds good. I'm saying that because it's literally happening right now. And the reality is that's where the wind is going. You have the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran coming into a peaceful new era, brokered by China. Then you have the relationship potentially with the reopening of the embassies, for sure, between Syria and Saudi Arabia, also brokered by Russia now. And so you have all of this happening. You can't ignore that. And as a country that is seeing where China's at, where Russia's at, with everything that's happening and how the West is falling apart, and saying, you know what, we're just going to go and do whatever the US says because they're our friend. Like, it just doesn't work like that, And this whole idea that these countries are just going to go along with what the West wants is really, again, and I said this in my last stream, it's really insulting to the people of these countries that don't think like a lot of Westerners, that do have faith and respect for their government, for whatever a politician, for Assad in Syria, for their national interests in these countries. And they don't think the way we think about our government. They don't. So that's just the reality. And the other thing, fam, that I thought was really big that happened, and shout out to Camilla for being on top of this stuff too. Brazil is going to export to China without going through the dollar. So this was an agreement between the two central banks that was announced by the Ministry of Finance during a seminar in Beijing on Wednesday. And Brazilian banks may also start using China's payment system. So this is, again, I touched on this briefly on the last stream on Monday. Brazil and other countries are going to start using the currencies of other nations that are going to be beneficial to their trade. In this case, right now, it's the yuan. And it's not surprising because the dollar is not, it's just, they're leaving the dollar for the yuan. They're ditching it, essentially. And this is happening everywhere. And as Pasta mentioned, if the Saudis do this, then I'm sorry, but the US is further screwed than it already is. And I think a lot of people need to realize that. When we say this, fam, I don't think people realize and understand what that means.
Nobody does. Even the older people who have the old money going around. There's a friend of mine over here. His name is Tony. And he says it's just ridiculous. These people, because we were talking about the impact of the Saudi-Iranian deal. And he's like, these people don't even know. They don't understand. They think it's going to go on. They're walking around like a bunch of zombies. And same with the youth in this country. They don't understand what happens outside their borders. They don't understand the significance of how, economics work. And you don't have to be a genius to understand how it works. It's just you have to understand basically how your money is equated to having value. And the money in the United States is only equated to having value because it's the Saudis have agreed for years to sell their dollars, to sell their oil, in dollars. And that's what's kept that global currency, which was the United States dollar, in play. The Russians, they have their money pegged to what? Commodities, oil, grains, actual things. You know what I'm saying? The Chinese base it upon commodities and actual physical things too, as well as their trade value. So as more people are starting to go to these other currencies, it's going to help, them, because they're going to get more value for their buck and not be under the boot of the United States empire. But you know as well as I do, fam, and I'm pretty sure you have the same feeling. A hegemony is not going to just walk away and go quietly into the night. So I am nervous of what the United States is going to do next, because they've always done the same thing, go to war. But now even the citizens are starting to call it out. However, I still think the attitude from a lot of the people in the States towards China is very wrong. It's misunderstood. And to think that we can go to a hot war with China is just ridiculous. So, I mean, for me, everybody's sitting there bragging about Trump, these people that want Trump back in office and stuff. He never really wooed anybody, right? He kind of used the same culture that was there beforehand. In fact, in some instances, he doubled down. We're going to muscle our way. We're going to let these people know, listen, Rocket Man, our missiles are bigger than your missiles and they work. That kind of mentality was still there. He didn't woo anybody in Latin America. He didn't woo anybody and go, hey, man, let's work together for once. Let's do something. You know what I'm saying? We could be exporting a lot of our engineering, a lot of our infrastructure. We can be doing that in these other countries rather than saying, hey, man, you do this or else, and we don't do anything for them. And now they're going, man, why is it work? Why is it good to work with the United States? They're not doing anything for us. They're just forcing us to go in to have their currency as our currency. But if we're not getting anything out of it, and the Chinese are coming in, hey, let me build you a dam. Hey, let me build you some bridges. Hey, let me build you some schools. Yeah, there's a price to pay for that, but you give yourself a fighting chance. And now if you can plug into their economics, into their monetary system, you can get some serious gains coming back. I don't think at the end of the day, it's possible to work unless you're plugged in with one of the global powers out here, right? You have to somehow peg your currency attached to one of these superpowers, whether it be the Chinese, the Russians, or the United States. It used to be the United States is the dominant one, but that's just not happening anymore. And if the Saudis do make this move, we're screwed. We're screwed.
I want to reiterate something that Pasta mentioned about the relationship with China versus the relationship with the United States. And you saw this, of course, in the meeting between Bashar al-Assad and Putin, and the meeting between Putin and Xi Jinping, where it's a relationship built on equity, a relationship built on an even platform, as much as possible, even though obviously there are economies that are bigger and more powerful than others. But it's this whole situation where this is also described as an effort to reduce transaction costs. This is not a requirement, by the way. The Brazilian banks will not be required by China to just use the yuan, but they can if they want to. So it's not like they're saying you must do this, but you can. It could be beneficial if you want to. And China is Brazil's largest trading partner, and a third of the goods exported from Brazil, which is South America's biggest economy, and that's around $70 billion a year, end up in China. So again, this isn't necessarily an ideological shift. When it comes down to all of the decisions that are being made, it's a business. It's a business transaction. It's a business mindset. It's a logical mindset. It's not that, because the US Western right is saying, oh, is going to twist this, Pasta, and I can already see it. Lula's in the pocket of the Chinese Communist Party and blah, blah, blah. And they're trying to take over with communism, and the Chinese, the CCP is going to come in and blah, blah, blah. This isn't about actually communism. This is about making money, making capital. This is about these countries getting their assets, getting their resources to develop the most profit for their countries that have been in dire straits, particularly Brazil, which is economy is so big it impacts the entirety of Latin America, and they can't do that when China is their largest trading partner. So it's literally, to me, the attacks that this is also, because of communists taking over, it doesn't stick, because this is literally more about making sure these countries have money, that have capital to survive and trade in the capitalist global economy. That's the reality. And so the whole ideological situation, it's nice. I mean, the only ideology I can get out of that is that people want some sort of like respect and national sovereignty and equity. And it's not like, China goes around and tells, Syria or Russia that they need to go back to being communist. That, it's not, that's not happening. There's no, we're going to go invade Russia and make sure they adopt the Soviet flag and blah blah blah. That's not happening. So there's a difference, because when we do that, meaning we, the United States, we go around and we say, hey, we need to ensure Cuba adopts democracy and stops with the government they're pushing, etc. Nicaragua, this dictatorship of the Sandinistas, they got to go. They need to adopt democracy. There's a difference, and I think people need to stop really putting ideology. Ideology may be important in some aspects, but right now, I don't think multipolarity is really in the ideology sector as much as it is in the just logic, economic, mutual respect sector.
Well, I think that people also have to understand that, these systems are always like morphing and adjusting to the times, right? I don't know which one of your boys said, if it was Engels or Lenin or which one of them, who said that, that's the whole thing about, socialism or communism. You're going to adjust to the times. And what China has is not even like the traditional communist system. It's like free market socialism, right? Like the state, and this is the mixed economy I always talked about. And it's only possible with free and fair elections, in my personal opinion. But if the state is going to control certain entities like healthcare, energy, roads, natural resources, but then have a whole, what the Chinese did, have a whole sector of businesses where private businesses can come into. I mean, the Chinese per capita have more small businesses than people in the United States do. So what does that tell you? It's like you adjust to the times, and it isn't about isms. It isn't about ideology. It's about adjusting to the global change of what's going on around with you, and who you can make partners and friends with, and what your society is built for, and who you can trade freely with, and who can scratch your back and you scratch theirs. People on both sides of the fence are too attached to the isms, just ridiculously, and that needs to stop. But and I don't, like I said, when it comes to China, a lot of people are adapting that model. I mean, Nicaragua's got somewhat of that model. You know what I'm saying? We saw that really in Bilwi, where the natural government, when the government's coming in only if there's a natural disaster or if they need to build some infrastructure problems, but they allow these autonomous zones to do their own thing, make their own laws, have their own businesses. And that's what needs to happen. I think that's why China's so successful, and these people want to go with China too as well. And they should somewhat emulate their models if they want that. And who are we to say anything about anybody wanting to do that? If they trust their governments more, then they're allowed to trust their governments. That's up to them. We have our own problems to fix over here. We shouldn't be telling anybody what to do.
Yeah, no. 100% agree.
Let me text our guest, fam. Do you have anything else to say about this? Do you want me to? We do have some comments. You want to put up some comments and say some hi to some people real quick, or?
People are saying stuff about your lights, fam.
What are they saying?
What's up with your lights, fam?
Are they flickering too much?
No, there's just like a nightclub over there.
Fam.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the shift is going, guys, and it's really obvious from this side of town. It's not weird. It's a normal shift. It's and Pasta's right. I mean, this isn't. I think people are attached to certain ideologies, and I can have my ideology, you can have your ideology, but the practicality, the reality of what's going on the ground is entirely different. And a real total communist system can't exist when the entire economy is capitalist. So people have to adapt to whatever that is. And China has done a great job of lifting its people out of poverty through whatever means you may not like, whatever, we don't live there. But they've done it, and it happened. I know this because literally people from China go to the United States and they study there and they have money, and our middle class is literally non-existent, essentially. In the United States, we actually don't have money. It's completely, mm, it's basically gone. It's and and we're focused on a lot of culture war issues right now, where people are blaming an entire segment of a population for whatever mass shooting it is. It's just ridiculous now what the U.S. is focused on, both the left and the right, and they're not focused at all on how to make economic change whatsoever. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're going to be seeing more of this stuff come up.
I mean, my boy DC over here, like right there, that's who I am, leftist libertarian, socialist libertarian, whatever you want to call me. That's where I'm at. I mean, I do talk about being a leftist libertarian because, this form of market socialism, this free market socialism, I love it. Like I know people are like, oh my God, how you can do that? But I believe if we can get to free and fair elections, then we can obtain these things because we can have real civil servants. And if we can have real civil servants, we'll get the people in there who will fight for the common man and woman instead of the billionaire oligarch class. And the hegemony is just trying their hardest to, Wyatt's trying to come in. They're trying their hardest to, hold on to what they got. And all these idiots that they got in Congress, that they cheated their way in, that they put them in office, they're holding on by a thread. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff today, the TikTok thing. But as soon as Wyatt Reed gets in here, my roll dog, my man, my travel compadre, he's looking around. All right, you ready? Set your face, smile, and boom.
Hello. How's it going, y'all?
How you doing, brother?
What's up, Wyatt?
Long time no see.
Yeah, right. I'm good. Just made it in. Literally just now made it in back home to Sweet Home, Virginia. So here we are. I'm a country boy at heart, so gotta come back.
Do we need the song? The song, the Virginia, what is it, like Take Country Home or whatever? Take Me Home. Country Road, that one?
It's not called Country Home, Fiorella.
What?
No, it's not called Country Home. Country Roads Take Me Home. That is actually, everyone from here will tell you that it's not actually about West Virginia. It's about Western Virginia. So just so you know, it's about where I'm from, not that West Virginia bullshit. So
that's very nice.
For the record,
let's stop talking about where you live. Let's talk about where you went. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, I have it over here for you, Wyatt. Maybe right there if you want. And the book that you recommended I get Fiorella, can you tell her about this book over here? Because
what am I telling?
What about this book? Because I can't read it to her, buddy. I gotta stuff. It's written in Spanish, and I'm still on my gringo phase.
It's gonna tell you how the war was won. I think that's kind of the main appeal of that book. So that's about. I've never read it, So you're gonna have to tell me, Fee.
All right, sounds great. I look forward to reading this giant book. But Wyatt, like, you guys just got back from Cuba. Was it your first time there, by the way?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay. So it was both of your first times. I was just curious to see. I know the internet wasn't good, so I didn't really get a chance to see very much of what you guys were like viewing and what you guys were experiencing. But yeah, just right off the bat, like what impacted you the most for the first time, because I know we've traveled to Honduras, Nicaragua, we've been to many countries. What is different about Cuba, first and foremost?
What is different about it? Everything's different about it. There's nowhere else like Cuba on planet Earth, I don't think. Right now is obviously probably the most difficult moment that the country's been through in decades, if not really since the revolution. It's pretty staggering what people tell you. The loss of Cubans to immigration right now. A lot of people are going to Florida. A lot of people, we heard basically the people in Havana, a lot of them want to go to Florida. A lot of people in the rest of the country want to go to Havana, just because things are really bad right now. I don't think we should sugarcoat that. It is a really difficult situation. People have had to endure serious losses in the rations over the past few years as a result primarily of the U.S. sanctions regime, but of course also as a result of the COVID response that basically shut down the tourism industry for well over a year. And it certainly seems as though that hasn't fully recovered right now. And so that was kind of one of their last economic lifelines. So really, it's a difficult situation that is generated obviously by the sanctions. My takeaway is basically, as opposed to somewhere like Russia, where the sanctions effectively backfired and helped, they helped sort of advance or accelerate this process of seeking independence and sovereignty from the Western financial system. They sort of accelerated Russia's ability to stand on its own 2 feet in many ways. They accelerated the process of Russia bringing home their production and becoming sort of self-sufficient in terms of their industry. Cuba is a different story. Cuba doesn't have nearly as much in the way of resources, and it's not it's just a different case, right? It's 90 miles from the coast of Florida. It does not have a massive amount of resources that it can rely on. Traditionally, it's relied on sugar exports, and those sugar exports right now are not, it's just kind of barely enough to take care of domestic consumption, because due to sanctions, again, over half of these sugar refineries are currently not working. So that means that all this what would have been a source of extra income just is not there, and they're not able to use that money to buy other goods to take care of people's needs like they had in the past. All of this to say that it's a pretty dire moment, and it's very clear that more investment is needed in a more concerted way, I think. It's hard right now to imagine a way out of this crisis that also isn't linked with Venezuela, right? For many years, but under Hugo Chavez, Venezuelan oil products were able to kind of help protect the system in place. They were able to, and it's not just Cuba, right? They were sending free or extremely cheap oil to countries like Nicaragua, to Haiti as well, and even to poor families in the Bronx and in Harlem and in New York, where 60 years ago, Fidel Castro went and became friends with Malcolm X, and was basically taken in by the Black community there when Washington and the white establishment tried to kick him out of his hotel. He ended up kind of turning that entire trip when he came to the UN into a massive finger in the eye of the US. He basically made them look like Wile E. Coyote. Everything they try to do backfires, and they're just, sawing the branch, and then they cut it off, and they were on the wrong side, and, whoop. So that was an important historical connection, but not to sidetrack too much. But there was a moment in time when Venezuela was able to help enormously. And it's hard to imagine that Cuba will be able to recover fully without that in place right now. Just something needs to jumpstart the process. And, for what it's worth, I've heard from friends who have covered this extensively that there is serious hope in Venezuela that they will have their oil production up and running here in the next few years. And that would be something that is potentially on the table. They're currently getting a lot of help from the Iranians. That's really going to hopefully enable them to get everything back up and running in terms of the oil situation in Venezuela. And if that comes, then I think you'll be able to see the beginning of a recovery in Cuba, a recovery on an industrial scale where they can really start getting everything going again. Because right now, as I said, it's clear that the system needs not regime change, but a level of reform.
I'd
You're
like to piggyback
muted.
on that. Yeah, I am muted myself. Sorry, I like to piggyback on that too as well, because I think at the end of the day, that is the message, right? They don't need regime change; they need reform change. They have to switch it up, and I think people don't understand too as well. And this is something me and Wyatt had talked about. On paper, they have opened up the door for private businesses to come into certain sectors of Cuba. Is it a little bit too late? Who knows? But I mean, I think that and I've said this before. It's one thing that people here in the United States who've never gone to Cuba go and they scream, Viva la Revolucion, and they have their Che shirt on and they're all about that. But when you talk to a lot of Cubans, especially a lot of young Cubans, excuse me, they don't know a lot about the revolution. They do know about it, but it doesn't factor into their everyday life.
Yeah,
Viva la Revolucion doesn't give them food. It doesn't feed them right now. And that's the issue. And when you see that kind of situation going on, you want to tell those people, listen, I get it, what you're saying, but you can't be married so much to the system. You have to adapt. You have to move around. You have to adjust. Like countries like Vietnam, like countries like Nicaragua, using that China model that, we had talked about, the market socialism, where you have a sector where it's controlled by the state, whether it be healthcare, energy, whatever the case may be. But then you open up to private businesses, because it's just a natural thing where a lot of Cubans, they want to have a say in what they do. They want to own a business. They want to have a restaurant. They want to, call their own shots. And we should find a way where we can make that happen, and that's what the government of Cuba is currently doing. However, how do you do that when you're so strangled by the United States? People are like, oh, there's no blockade going on. There's an economic blockade. You can't use SWIFT. You can't access your credit card. You can't even go online and check your bank account. So they've made everything difficult that way. Yeah, sure. The Biden administration is now open up where you can get direct flights to go there. On the way out, Donald Trump, his last week in office, slapped all these sanctions on there where they would even limit the amount of remittances that Cuba can receive on these certain cards. Western Union is not there. But that also says, now that you have all these situations, what can the Cuban government do moving forward now to make this happen? And there's got to be some responsibility on their shoulders to kind of adjust with the times and make things happen. I personally think that the Western oligarchs, when it comes to two countries, will never let up on their particular government. That's the Haitian government or country, because what they did with the Bolivarian Revolution, and that's Cuba. Mainly what they did with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think it's freaked them out, the United States, where they say, I am never going to let the boot off the neck of this communist government. But, Fidel Castro has moved on. He's gone. There's a new opportunity. There's a new chance with Diaz-Canel, and he has to make things happen. I think the fact that he has started opening up to private businesses, that might help. But it's like me and Wyatt said, somebody's going to have to come in with a load of money and some infrastructure projects or some other type of money ingested into that system, because they're right now stuck at a standstill. And even though you have all these, populist right conservatives screaming, it's communism, it's socialism, and you're like, dude, there's zero homelessness in Cuba. We didn't see any homeless people on the street. They still have their issues, but why don't you clean your own act and clean your own house first and stop trying to force your ideology on a government? It's not about the ism. It's about the times and the global market and making this work for everybody. So there has to be some form. I said to Wyatt, I said, they should have Bitcoin in here. They should have Bitcoin ATMs. They got to figure out a way to go around the banking system. But there's going to have to be, with the fact that you're 90 miles from Cuba, from where we're at, there's going to have to be a new way forward. And, I think that Diaz-Canel, we understand the United States is very hard to work with. But we've seen these other governments. I think we've seen Lula or Xiomara make some type of concessions towards the United States so you can get other things. So I think it's going to take some type of work from the Cuban government to somehow make that happen, in addition to fighting past these sanctions. That's just my first overall opinion right away.
Right. And there is, as we discussed, there is a push towards that. There is a new sort of NGO, Russian Trade Council, that's opened up in the past few months, that's looking towards different investment opportunities from a Russian perspective. Basically, the idea, as far as I can tell, this is an initiative that's led by Oleg Deripaska, is to basically try to give the Cubans the expertise, tell them the lessons learned from the Russian experience with opening up to capitalism, and try to help them, I think, of avoid some of the pitfalls that happened in Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, because but in terms of Pasta's point, the cryptocurrency is one part, but right now the internet situation, that would complicate things. They need to have more. Just a better quality and more reliable internet to really, I think, take advantage of crypto in the way that it could be taken advantage of by them. But all this hopefully will go. Hopefully will be enough. Hopefully will be enough to kind of last until something changes in an external sense, whether that be the United States deciding to let up the boot for half a second again. Or that be help from Venezuela, from Russia, from China, in terms of getting back on their feet. That's going to have to happen, because the alternative is basically going to be regime change, right? And regime change for Cuba would not be a pretty thing. Cubans are incredibly friendly. There's extremely low crime. There's very little criminality on the island. Imagine what happens when that gets overthrown and there's nothing there. There's a power vacuum, and then people like the Colombian cartels move in. People, because can you imagine an island 90 miles from Florida where you can just there's dozens and dozens of ports you could be sending shipments of, submarines even. At that distance, it's really impossible to imagine. The U.S. establishment really should think twice about what they're doing. Because they have to understand on some level that if they do one day succeed in overthrowing Cuba, that they're going to open up probably the biggest drug smuggling capital really the world would have ever seen. It's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be insanely dangerous. It's going to be run by cartels if they manage to overthrow the Cuban government. So that's really not going to be a pretty situation. It'll be more equivalent to the Dominican Republic or Haiti, but probably with worse gang violence, if that's even something we can imagine. So, it's an important time to try to, I think, start thinking of ways, not just for the Cuban government, but for people all over the world who really do care about the Cuban people. We can't just go there and say like, rah, 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 everything's amazing. Cuba is, a paradise or something. We need to address reality as it is and think of ways that we can genuinely help. In many cases, that might mean trying to find investment opportunities. I don't know how easy that is for Americans, but they need, they don't need lectures. They don't need regime change, but they do need help. And I think there are a lot of ways that those of us who care about people, who want to see less suffering in the world, want to see a fairer, more just world. I think there are a lot of ways that we can help. That it's just a matter of getting together and being on the same team and addressing the reality as it is and not as we want it to be.
And I think also too, when we talk about what the Cuban government needs to do moving forward, they need to curtail their society to what Cuba needs. An island full of PhDs is not going to help the situation. And people who are doctors, Wyatt told me this joke when we first got there. It was hysterical. This beautiful woman met this nice young man that they thought he was a waiter and a bartender on the Malecon, but it turns out he was just a doctor. It's like you have all these people who have all these, they're highly educated and whatnot. What I didn't see enough of was bricklayers, carpenters and all that stuff going on. Like maybe if they concentrated more to their society right now to rebuild Cuba, concentrate on their infrastructure and raise society and kind of gear their society to have more of that, and maybe get away from all having so many doctors and quite frankly, you can see a lot of these people getting upset sometimes because they don't want to do this type of work out there. They can look on their phone. They can see 90 miles away. A doctor has a good life and a nice house and whatnot, and they're driving a cab on a regular basis just to try to eat food. So it gets frustrating to them. You know what I'm saying? And that's not everybody in society. I talked to our landlord. We were talking to our landlord. She's like, Yeah, a lot of these Cuban people, they're like, I don't want to work. I'm going to the beach instead. There's some frustration there, but there's a lot of people who do take pride in what they do. They do take pride that they are, independent from the United States. But after so long, you got to say somewhat of these sanctions are working some way where they are kind of getting the people so aggravated and distraught at their own government that, they have to make this change. And I'd like to see more of that. I wish I saw more carpenters and bricklayers and that kind of things going on. Maybe the sanctions having a lot of materials coming in, but we did see highly educated people who, that's what they do. And when you're an engineer and you're educated to be an engineer, you want to work as an engineer, right? I mean, I would assume that. And if that society doesn't have the room or the jobs to provide for that, you're going to see that kind of pushback against the government.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, I don't really see it as my place to say, like, this is what they need to do or not what they need to do, but it is true that there is a surplus of educated people. And I think the reality is it's not just that they don't want to work, it's that they don't want to work for those wages, because it's pretty poor wages compared to what people would make in the United States. So I think that's a factor as well, where, like, if you were able to start getting the things running again, getting production back up, I think you would be able to see an increase in the minimum wage to where people would, who are overqualified for these jobs, would be more interested in working that kind of bricklayer or whatever kind of construction job. But right now it's very low wages. I think it's 2,500 pesos a month is what we were told, which is something like $16 or $17, which is just, obviously people get rations and they get food provided for them. So that's kind of money on top, but it's not enough. It really just isn't. That was kind of the theme that we got from most of the people that we talked to.
Yeah.
I was going to say that they are, I mean, and I agree. Builders need materials. I get that. And, I'm saying, and I think a lot of that, the sanctions are hurting that entity too as well. But I was just kind of alluding to the fact there's a bunch of highly educated people on the island, and I think they're going to want to work in those fields.
It's true. It's true. I just, but there's no easy solution there, right? And you can't flip a switch overnight. It says, forget all the knowledge, forget all your dreams, But and again, I do want to reiterate, like, this is not I have no expertise in the solution. I don't really understand Cuba's problems nearly in the way that Cubans do. So I think this is something that, Cubans are going to have to figure out for themselves. I don't want to come along and try to tell them what to do. The United States coming along, people from the US coming along and telling them, hey, you got to do X, Y, and Z. That's been happening way too long. That's why things are so bad right now. But, so to me, I think it's about trying to give them the opportunity to push back, to get this boot off their neck for just long enough to breathe, to really get some strength in their force to where they can actually fight back. That's I think the challenge of the next few years. And it's something that, I want to be optimistic about, because I really do believe that it can be done. But I don't want to be naive, and I don't want to just be a utopian about this. There are real issues, and it's going to take a lot of hard work to get through them.
Yeah, and they have switched, like I said, Diaz-Canel. It was in 2021, I think they did it, or it was late 2020, maybe it was 2022. What's up, Gabriel? We love you. They have opened up towards the private sector. They're doing it themselves, and that's why they've asked the Russians to come in. And that article, what I was going to say too as well, it's like, oh, the Russians are coming in. It's the same old business again. Here comes communism even further, like trying to emulate what's going on from the Soviet Union. That's not the case. They saw what the Russians did. They want to try to emulate that. They want to try to have some free markets. So they are adjusting, and they've said there's a path forward, and they're looking that way. And I'm excited about that. But
Right.
It's going to take a lot to make this happen. And yes, I don't want to ever misrepresent what's going on as far as the major effect and why they're suffering. And that is the U.S. sanctions. That is labeling them as a state sponsor as terrorism. That is kicking them out of SWIFT. That is the main issue right now. We need to pull the hell off. And if we do, maybe they can find a great way forward in hopefully an expedient amount of time, because they need some help right now. And we were talking about the rations, right, fam? When you go get your money, like one young lady we talked to, she used to get 6 pounds of sugar a month, a couple pounds of rice. She says it's been the worst ever, even back when the Soviet Union collapsed. It's bad right now. She gets like 2 pounds of brown sugar, and it's just really, really tough. And I'm hoping they can find a way forward.
Well, I just wanted to say real quick that I know that relationships are building with Russia, as you guys sort of mentioned. That visit to Putin with by Diaz-Canal was really important in developing more economic partnerships that will more obviously so benefit Cuba. And I know Iran was involved, and I know China's going to be involved, because that is the one hope I see for Cuba, is the rise of multipolarity. Where before you got here, Wyatt, we did talk about Brazil's shift and then potentially using the yuan, and them, of course, siding with Russia when it came to the investigation that the UN Security Council voted down, but just being one of 3 that voted in favor. And also just their
you mean you don't
relationship
think Lula is actually secretly a puppet of Joe Biden?
No, we
we
really don't. But
yeah, I have a
I
whole series of half-assed blog posts I have to show you that will totally change your mind.
We could totally talk about that if you want in a minute, but like
Sorry.
I was just making the point about the just, I think there is hope in that. And the other thing is, one of the things I do like about Nicaragua is that that I've seen not true in Russia, is that they have educated the youth about, the revolution and what happened and everything. And I think, as far as I knew from people being in Cuba, that was also lacking. And I don't think the reality helps. Like, the reality on the ground, and the reality is people don't have enough food to eat. They're going through economic stress, and to say the least. And I think that is something that is really dangerous. And we're obviously, as you guys mentioned, the potential for regime change is there. But I think right now, even though things are so dire for Cuba, is also the potential for the opposite to happen, with the help, I think, of the communities that are rising up against Western hegemony. And because on this end of the spectrum, looking from the Russian, Chinese, Syrian, Iranian perspective, things are actually looking up for these countries. And I think the global South can be helped by that. We're seeing the rise of Pan-Africanism. We're seeing the rise of certain sectors of Latin America, even though obviously there's still that relationship with the West. So I'm hoping that we do see that. And I also wanted to ask you guys, as far as how people are aware of the government. Do people how were people when they were going out to vote? How were things? How did they feel? How did it seem like they felt like going into the situation over there?
Well, I'll speak first on that, and I'll pass it to Wyatt too as well, because obviously we were not granted permission to go and observe the elections. And, I walked very lightly. I didn't try to film anything. I didn't try to shoot anything, because that's not allowed there until you can, have a relationship of sorts and you get your credentials. We did our due diligence. We went to the Center for International Press, and we talked to some people. We're trying to lay the groundwork moving forward. But
I'll clarify. I want to clarify. We really didn't have the credentials in advance, that was the main issue. If we had been able to work out those credentials in advance, I think we would have been able to get access, or significantly more than we did. But we were pretty last minute in terms of actually being able to contact the right people. So I don't want to portray that as though like they just shut us down. It was I think that was partly certainly my fault.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that goes to our activist community, right? Like, obviously reaching out to everybody and getting no help from them didn't help. We had to go show up in person and start to establish a relationship, understand what to do moving forward. And I understand.
Okay, but we didn't reach out to the right person. I'm just going to tell you right now. We didn't reach out to the right person.
Either way, I think it's
whatever. But certainly there were people that could have made that process a little bit easier. But at the end of the day, like that was our fault.
And I just think it would take a little time to establish a relationship, and I'm okay with that, especially with a country like Cuba, where the CIA has been in there for so long. So I have no beef whatsoever. I don't think they did anything wrong. I showed up on the doorstep and like, who the fuck are these two gringos? Let's give them, right? Like, who the hell are these guys? So I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that the Cuban government did anything wrong and they were cold and whatnot. They took our meetings, they sat down, they talked to us, they let us know the process. So I do want to point that out, that, that's what I'm saying. But, with that being said, it's just a different type of elections. Obviously I walked around and the election spots are so close to each other. There's a bunch of them. You can literally walk a couple blocks. I walked in like a quarter-mile radius, and I walked by 5 polling places. So it's there. I saw the kids inside and whatnot. I would like to see a little bit more enthusiasm for the elections, as far as like, I don't know if there's a law, but they couldn't, hang banners on the streets for different type of candidates like we saw in Nicaragua and stuff. And, I'd like to see that. But then again, I wasn't watching local Cuban TV. And I think we spoke to some people that were very enthused. They were very happy about the election. And we talked to some people that were not even interested in the election. So I'd like to see more, but we didn't have the right access just yet. I think we will get it. We will continue to go there and work there and see if we can talk to some people. But so the election situation is a little bit different this time. Okay. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, I certainly haven't seen elections carried out that way before myself. I don't really have too much to offer because, as I said, we were not, partly again, my fault, our fault, but it was kind of a last minute thing. And I think it was probably a little bit unrealistic that we would be able to make that happen. But I'm going to plan to meet in person, hopefully next time I go back up to DC with some people at the embassy, and hopefully they can get us in touch with the right folks and help us out a little bit in the future going forward. And, I didn't get an explanation from anyone on an official basis of what's happening. So I was kind of just left to draw my own conclusions about the electoral process. And there was a lot of people who, especially youth, who just kind of viewed the whole thing as an abstraction. They aren't necessarily, they don't know what it was like before the revolution. They don't remember Batista's men gouging people's eyes out and torturing people and, random extrajudicial executions on the street. Like, they don't remember being a playground for the mafia. They just know that now they have cell phones and now they're able to look at Instagram and see that 90 miles away, everyone's got cars and washing machines, and plenty of people have their own pools, and they just, they see that people are able to feed themselves more easily, and we're in that international interconnected age. And it's not like, to me, it's not as bad as someplace like Haiti, where it's like, the violence, just the incredible level of violence, in addition to a lot of hunger, but that kind of dynamic is there, whether you like it or not, at this point, where people know that they could do something better for themselves and for their kids more easily, just by kind of opting out of the thing if they can. And it's a very powerful motivation for a lot of people, especially, as we said, the younger generation. And it's hard to blame people for that. Just the reality of the situation, the whole point of socialism is to make things better for people. But in the efforts to prevent that from happening, to prevent that socialist model from functioning, the United States has been, I think, more successful now than it really ever was before. And I think you see that reflected in the attitudes that a lot of the younger people especially had towards the elections. But I imagine, I hope certainly that by the time the next elections come around, we'll be able to get a closer look at what's happening and at people's responses to it.
Like I said, the revolution 60 something odd years ago, some of the younger generations are like, that's good and dandy, but how does that help us out today? You know what I'm saying? That's what they're looking at, and that's what they're pointing to. It's like, I get it. How does that help us out today? I want to eat today, you know? And that's the situation in Cuba. I do want to point out, though, that it is like the friendliest, nicest people in the world, man. It's like, you know, we walk down the darkest alley, and I think people were more scared of me than I was of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, you know what I'm saying? You just don't feel threatened whatsoever there. And, you know, waking up in the middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I hear people singing and dancing and still having a good time, you know, despite the conditions they're in. I think that's pretty amazing. And, you know, like, we did not see any homeless people at all. Maybe one or two people that are possibly could have been homeless, but, you know, you just didn't see it there. You know, we walked around the streets late at night. You don't see it. And there are some things that they've done great, and they, you know, making sure that the most vulnerable aren't left out in the streets is something important, I think. And that has to be, you have to commend the Cuban government for at least doing that.
Well, it's they have so few resources right now, and it just gives you a sense of where their priorities are as opposed to our government, right? They have just this little amount, and even then it's like, okay, what can we do to make sure this is evenly distributed and everyone gets this little bit of what we have, as opposed to here, which is there's so much excess that, you know, because of this imperialist model, because they go all over the world, basically exploiting the most vulnerable, and bringing those profits back home. There is a higher standard of living. Some of the excess, some of the crumbs from the table do come down, and that is, you know, something that people can get a taste of if they come over. But it really reflects a totally different attitude in priorities in terms of what is the point of a government. It's to prevent people from you know, from total chaos. It's to prevent people from falling into starvation, you know, from being homeless. It's to educate people. And sadly, in this case, you know, I think the fact that the sanctions have been so successful means that, this government has almost been too successful in educating people, you know, as crazy as that sounds. But that priorities, right? Those ideas like, okay, this is what we are meant to do. This is what our purpose is. That still colors the Cuban government's position. I mean, that's still kind of the main orientation. How do we give out what we have as equitably as we can? It's just that right now, you know, the sanctions are succeeding, I think, in a way that they probably never have before.
Yeah. And fam, as an Italian American who used to, you know, have family members that were over there in the casinos, I apologized if I caused any pain, any harm, and they forgave me. There's a lot of Italian food still on their menus in some of their restaurants. A lot of pesto, carbonara, pomodoro, those kinds of things. You can kind of feel the influence. I even saw one of the books over there that said the Italian mafia in Cuba, and, you know, what had happened. And, you know, we had talked, I was telling Wyatt, like, you know, and they portrayed this in certain movies, like in The Godfather 2, Michael Corleone found out that Fredo was the one who ratted him out when the revolution, when the Castro revolution was coming on in, and literally pretty much like the Batista government came out and told the people like, hey, the government's falling, they're coming on in, get the hell out of here. So a bunch of mafioso guys and other guys and other, you know, aristocrats of Cuba had to jump on a boat and just get the hell out. You know, it's like, And that actually happened there at one point. And in real life, in the movie The Irishman, they portrayed it like they had a scene where Pesci's kind of looking at the TV and he's pissed off, and the Cuban Revolution, fucked up their plans, and they were pissed off that supposedly JFK's father, who was a guy who was an alcohol smuggler in Illinois.
This is real life.
What?
Was this real life? You're talking about JFK
from what happened in real life. They put it in
Okay.
these movies. You know what I'm saying? They were very much pissed off, and why the mafia was supposedly included. I mean, we don't know, because this has never been, this is not what history is. Lee Harvey Oswald is the one that killed John F. Kennedy on the books, right? Well, a lot of people know it was a hit, and the mafia was involved working with the CIA, and the mafia was supposedly pissed off that JFK didn't help them get back Cuba because they wanted Cuba.
That's a theory.
Well, the mob, it's not a theory that the mob was in there. The mob was in there.
Right.
They controlled the casinos. But there's a theory that says JFK was also one of the reasons the Italian mafia was pissed off, is he couldn't get them Cuba back. And I can tell you, I had family members. My grandfather used to curse Castro, because he was in Cuba at one point of his life. And he was like, these bastards, Castro bastard, you know what I'm saying?
So what did you think about JFK?
I never really talked to him about JFK. So I was too young there to put it together. I didn't know this until all this shit until after he was dead. But I knew, asking about Cuba, he was like, he hated Castro. Like, I know that much, you know. So, and he told me he went to Cuba, to work with some of the wise guys in the casino at one point in his life. Wow. So I know he was there, and
I mean, and there's certainly mob connections. Jack Ruby, obviously the most obvious one to the Kennedy assassination. I certainly wouldn't surprise me if there was a serious mob hand in that assassination. They were clearly being utilized by the CIA, especially in regards to Cuba. So, I think it tracks. Whether or not there's that specific hard evidence behind it, I can't say, but I certainly would not doubt that at all. All theories.
Well, I'm hoping to go May, and either way, so hopefully I get to see for myself and report back as well a lot of the things that you guys are talking about. And
we didn't get out of Havana was our problem. We stayed in Havana the whole time. So next time around, to see the rest of the country would be an important thing too, I think, to get a sense for, what's going on in the rest of the country.
And the most rewarding thing for me on that trip, and it was always, it's so great to go with Wyatt. Like, all right, we're in all these countries together, and it's just like an adventure. And it was our first time in Cuba, and I always, appreciate going with my comrades to these countries. And we did miss you, fam. We really were hoping that the crew was there, But for me, one of the most enjoyable things was handing out baseballs to the kids, because baseball is their national sport. I brought 18 baseballs with me and was able to give them to the young kids, and it was just, that was so rewarding. And next time I go back there, I want to bring a bag full of stuff for the kids: soccer balls, baseballs, mitts, the whole 9 yards. Try to take donations, and anybody can send balls and mitts and bring it there and stuff. The Cuban people, they're amazing, and I can't wait to get back there again.
Awesome. Fam, anything else you have for Wyatt?
Nope. Wyatt can get his funky ass out of here. Wyatt, let everybody know where they can find you, brother.
You can find my funky ass on Twitter if you're lucky. You type in @WyattReed13. That's @WYATTREED13. You have to go directly search for it. I'm not going to appear because I'm shadow banned to hell and back. So you have to type it in exactly as that and click enter username, or maybe you can find me from some post that somebody else mentioned me, but you're not going to find me very easily. So just go straight to twitter.com/WyattReed13. You can catch me on Telegram. There I actually am searchable. Just type in Wyatt Reed. You'll see my channel pop up. I have a Substack as well that I've been using more and more recently. And you type in Wyatt Reed Substack and Google, that'll pop right up. So check me out on whichever of those platforms is most convenient. We'll be doing what we always do, which is just try to go places that the other guys won't and show you the truths that they try to cover up. And we'll keep on doing that till they shut us down.
You know, Wyatt, before you do get here, I do want to play one video because we were kind of talking about something before, and I really would love to get your opinions on this one. This is something that you showed me, and I want to show Fam because Fam was talking about the Brazil thing with the UN, and maybe you can just make some really quick comments about it. But this is what happened at the UN. Wyatt turned me on to this. This is freaking Fam. I don't know if you saw this. This is amazing. Check this out. No context. I'm just going to let it roll right now, okay?
Okay.
Do you think the presence of the U.S. military in Syria is illegal or not?
That's not an issue that we're dealing with at this stage. There's been a war.
But is that because it
there's,
sounds very familiar. This week we talk a lot about the UN Charter, the international law, and relative resolutions. But it sounds to me a foreign military-based presence in another country without invitation sounds like something else to me. You know.
I'll leave your analysis to you. There's at this
What's the difference between Syria, the situation in Syria and the situation in Ukraine?
There's no U.S. armed forces inside of Syria, and so I don't have a. It's not a parallel situation.
You're
to some of
sure
the
there's no U.S. military personnel?
I believe there's military activity.
Yeah,
but in terms of ground presence in Syria, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, 5 U.S. service members were injured in that attack. If there were no U.S. service members in Syria, how could they got injured? That's weird, right? Should I ask you about that?
Fam, there's no military. Only military activity. You see what I'm saying, Fam? There's a big difference.
Well, I mean, he's technically not wrong. Like, you could have some kind of air strikes or whatever, but he was wrong. He was lying. There are U.S. service members there. There's about 900 that we know of, just wearing uniforms, who are illegally occupying Syria. And the UN won't even say that. It shows you basically what they are. They're not a legitimate multilateral instrument. They are a puppet of the United States. Puppet of the West, and they, the U.S. says jump, and they say how high. So that video blew up. I published that on my podcast account. It's called Decentral Intelligence, and it's got I think 500,000 views at least since yesterday. It's I think really telling that that exchange right there. He really kind of caught him in a trap. He did actual journalism. He did what people in the West, what people in the mainstream media would do if that was actually encouraged, if they were actually encouraged to do that, as opposed to just swallow whatever is told to them, hook, line, and sinker, when it's coming from a Western official. Instead, he pushed back. He asked very simple, straightforward questions, about 3 of them, and that was enough for that guy Farhan Haq to basically lose his mind. And I think I used the phrase "fold like a cheap suit." He's like, yeah, I guess that is weird. Yeah, huh? How about that? So yeah, that was a masterclass in journalism. Hats off to the journalist. I think his name is Jude Deshi.
Edward Zhu.
Well, that's his American name. I don't know how to pronounce his.
That's his name on his Twitter. And I think his Twitter was zapped for a while, and it was back on. So the fact that it's going to be on now, and going to be saying that Elon Musk was part of the Chinese Communist Party for allowing this guy to go on. He's got the label of the Chinese state entity on his thing. So don't feel bad, guys. You're not alone. Affiliated media people.
We're in good company, right? The people that actually ask questions. I actually had people point that out to me. It's like, oh, okay, so now I know whenever somebody's state affiliated evil media, they're the people that are going to ask the actual important questions. Great. Now we have a new way to know. So hats off to whatever State Department hack made Twitter introduce that stupid label. Congrats. Anyway.
Thanks, guys.
Great to talk to you guys.
All right, Wyatt. Yeah, see you soon. Take care.
Love you.
Bye.
We'll speak soon. See you soon. And hold down the berg for me, will you, brother?
Always.
Peace.
Take care of Moscow out there, Fee, and I
And
know.
I'll take care of Putin. Don't worry.
Yeah, and I know my Italian boy's got his Florida connections. You probably back to. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna take over the whole state soon. Don't worry.
Pasta for mayor. Mayor of Boca Raton is coming
Oh
soon.
God.
Love you, Wyatt.
Bye.
Wyatt Reed, everybody.
So yeah, I was actually trying to find Wyatt because I wanted to see if you guys had any like videos or anything, and like I couldn't find him. I went to search him and I couldn't find him. I'm like, oh okay, yeah, this is what happens when I search either one of us. So
Yeah. Well, fam, we were also trying to do things in the right way. It was Cuba. We just got, like I said, it's 2 gringos showing up on your doorstep, and they're like, "Who the hell are you guys?" Right? Like nobody told them that we were coming. Nobody did anything. We just showed up, and you got to build a relationship sometimes, and that doesn't bother me. I didn't think we were going to get access to the election right away because they don't know who we are. You know what I'm saying? And that's just going to take some time. It's going to take a little time. And I have confidence for the future that we will get a little bit more involved in Cuba. We will get these press credentials, and they'll loosen up to us. But I don't doubt them or hold anything against them in any way, shape, or form. And that somebody's like, I didn't see a lot of the footage you put up there because we don't want to do that just yet, right? We don't want to just go and do shit without their permission. That's not being a good guest. That's being an asshole. So I look forward to a building relationship with the Cuban people. And
Cuba is a country that's literally like the U.S. is trying to overthrow right now. Yeah. And like people need to understand, like, you can talk about all the stuff you want about freedom of the press, but like the reality is the oppositional media is prevented in the U.S. They prevent you from seeing the other side. And so in Cuba, they're very afraid of Westerners coming in and, doing anything like that. So I don't hold it against them. It's the same. I see the same fears in Russia, the same fears in China, the same fears in any state, Nicaragua, like any country that's been under the boot of the U.S. empire, that is afraid of any sort of NGO coming in, any sort of like independent media that's literally Western backed and Western funded. So especially when their viewpoints get completely shut out. So I understand that it's not on an equal footing as, say, going to France or going to the UK or going to somewhere else. That's like, it's just not. So people need to understand that, especially people in the US, as to why. And the whole thing that you guys mentioned about the young people not being alive during seeing, what happened with Batista and all that, like, that's the same thing here. People were not alive during the whole situation that happened with the communist revolution. They don't know how the West was involved. They don't know what happened. So a lot of the old school communists you see here, when my good friend Dan Kovalik was here, I was like, damn, Dan, like, they're all like really old. All the comrades are very old. And he's like, yeah, there's just not that many young people here. So it's unfortunate. And that's something that I think needs to be better taught. A lot of younger people here also have a more rose-colored view of the West because they don't know. And they see a lot of the propaganda that comes in through social media of how cool the US is. And they buy it. And that's why Navalny focused on young people. He focused on doing that because they want to use young people always to overturn the government. They've tried to do it in Nicaragua. They have tried to do it in Iran recently. They have tried it in Russia. So they try it everywhere because it works. It oftentimes, that's how it works. Color revolutions with the youth that doesn't remember the history or doesn't know their history. So,
well, also too, the fact that the youth are the ones who are going to have less finances, less opportunity until it comes around. I mean, older people are going to sit on old money, whatever country they're in. Like, they're sitting in the United States right now. It's all old money. I mean, the Wall Street bets situation, right? With when all these young people had all this money in the stock and driving up, and they just got their rug pulled out from underneath them. Who suffered? It was young people took it in the face, so older people could get their money back, and that's sometimes how the system works. And that's why you're going to target young people because they're going to be more disgruntled. They're going to want more opportunity. They're going to want more different times and stuff. But like I said, this is up to and that's the thing. You can't deny the fact that the Cuban government is trying to adjust with the times. I think it's all a new opportunity because of and I'm looking forward to see what Diaz-Canel can do. I really am. It's because he's not Castro. Castro put the missiles here with the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? So he can distance himself from that and say, look, those are old times. These are new times. You know what I'm saying? And in any way, shape, or form, I think it's tough too, right? You see concessions made by some of these leaders where they can.
I don't know if concession to the U.S. is the way to go, though, in my opinion.
I think we've seen it. I believe right now that Xiomara has made some concessions. I believe that Lula's made some concessions. They give a little.
They're in a different position.
What's that?
They're in a different position than Cuba.
I do. But they give a little bit to get more. They can't do what Nicaragua's doing. It's a different situation.
No, they can't do what Nicaragua's doing, but they can't also give in much at all, to be honest, because the U.S. will literally come in here and take they'll give them an inch and the U.S. will take the entire body. I think they're better off relying on China, Russia, that side of the world than anything to do with the U.S. I do not trust any sort of reliance with the U.S. The only thing I could say is from the U.S. is them to end the blockade, and that's something we as Americans could fight for. On our end, but
it's also an economic blockade. You know what I'm saying? It's like cutting them off from SWIFT is terrible, and then not letting their neighbors, punishing their neighbors or their potential trade partners if they do business with them. That's a shitty thing to do. It's just shitty, and that's what the United States is doing, and they don't give a shit who they're affecting and who they're hurting. They're hurting the people of Cuba. The citizens.
They don't give a shit about stealing Syria's oil while they're literally just underwent an earthquake and not giving them aid either. So,
let me just send some shout outs really quickly because we got to keep rolling over here. Trey Wright, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch.
Nice to see you, Trey.
It's always great to see you, Trey. Also over here, Cultist Demon. The WEF stands for Western Economic Forum. Thank you, Cultist Demon. These always do help out. He also said those who criticize the communists for being authoritarian have never actually held power, and so they don't understand just how difficult it is to build and defend socialism. Thank you, Cultist Demon. Also, I don't know who this was this you asked the Cubans? Somebody left me somebody left us a tip, said ask the Cubans. Hemcar, I can't say, is there a website that you can donate to a Cuban families? I was told I'd be integrated and fined if I visited.
Interrogated.
What's that? Interrogated. I'm sorry. Can't say. Interrogated and fined if I visit Cuba. There are reasons. There is a list of 10 reasons why you're allowed to visit Cuba. But yes, there are rules that they don't want you to do. There's no way. There's no Western Union. There's none of that shit. You can't do that stuff. There are a limited amount of ways that you can send remittances or money or help to the Cuban government. They don't want you doing it. They can fine you. You can get in trouble from our government, unfortunately. The only thing that Biden has really lifted is that he's allowed flights to go back into Cuba, and he's allowed the remittances on certain remittances through certain avenues, certain cards. Like, once again, they're shut out from the banking industry to be donated. So it's still really, really, really tough to do these things because our government is not allowing it to happen because they want to suffocate Cuba as much as they can. And that's just the crux of it.
Okay.
By the way, we got one more, fam. I'll let you read this one if you don't mind. I'll put it up. Here you go, fam.
El Marino, the extra education problem is a symptom, not a cause. Wyatt is right. The Cubans know tons of stuff of what is needed, and what is needed. The blockade is a problem. It's not just the regular sanctions. SP, where would the Russian economy be now if it had 11 times less population, no industrialization, and 60 years of sanctions? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And Cuba doesn't really have the industry, any sort of industry besides the tourist industry that really killed it. So, yeah.
So let's get to this last subject.
Yeah, let's get to it because it's already 1:30.
Okay, really briefly, really quickly. As you know, fam, our government knows how to prioritize the real problems, right, fam? They're just awesome. And now with TikTok, being a problem because we don't want the Chinese Communist government collecting United States data and going after us. So this is Dan Crenshaw, and this is something that just makes me fucking laugh the whole time. It's that, like, dude, the CEO from TikTok. Well, let me just play, and you can see for yourself, ladies and gentlemen.
In other words, ByteDance and also your TikTok employees that live in China, they must cooperate with Chinese intelligence whenever they are called upon. And if they are called upon, they're bound to secrecy. That would include you. So, Mr. Chu, if the CCP tells ByteDance to turn over all data that TikTok has collected inside the US, even within Project Texas, do they have to do so according to Chinese law?
Congressman, first, I'm Singaporean.
That's fine.
He says, that's fine. Asshole. He's not Chinese. He's Singaporean. He's from Singapore. That's fine. I mean, he
doesn't know the difference. He doesn't know the difference.
Here. And that's what he told me. I encourage everybody to go to watch the whole 5-minute back and forth with Dan Crenshaw. This is how stupid and dumb they really are, ladies and gentlemen. This is how dumb.
He doesn't know the difference, guys.
This is the guy who wants to go into Mexico.
He thinks they're the same country, fam. Literally. That's why he said that.
So here's the next point I want to bring up. I got a little clip of Tucker over here because Tucker now is also talking about, this is kind of the analogy where it's kind of drawing the parallel to what happened with Cambridge Analytica, right? What they did is they collect data on you. And now once they understand what you like, they can create an algorithm in which they want to thrust at you, to consume you, to move you in a certain direction, right? So they can propagandize you if they know what you want, is what they're trying to imply. So I want you to watch this film. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but then I want your comments after, because to me, it's like, okay, he's blaming the wrong person. Take a look at what Tucker has to say here about TikTok, because it's pretty much similar to what's going on with what Crenshaw is saying. And this is where, Tucker is completely wrong. Tucker, who said last week or the week and a half ago that it was wrong for him to support the Iraq war, he was wrong. That was a great moment. Thank you, Tucker, for doing so. But what about this right here? Take a look.
Every day, more than 2 billion people use a social media app called TikTok. Many of them are young people under the age of 24. If you had kids, you probably know already how TikTok works. TikTok lets users upload short videos. Usually they're under 30 seconds. What's interesting is that the content of these videos varies a lot depending upon what country you're in. If you're in China, where TikTok is headquartered, you tend to get more educational content. But if you live in this country, you get an awful lot of filth and propaganda tailored for kids. We're not guessing about this. We ran an experiment to prove it last summer. Watch. The TikTok that Chinese residents, children in China get to see is very different from the one your kids are looking at here. Now, in China, where TikTok is known under a different name, videos like these are very common. Watch.
Legends never die. They become a part of you.
You know what American kids, your kids, are watching on TikTok? Stuff like this.
Dog, player, I get it. Fraud, player, I get it. Tiempo no salvo hace tiempo, tú dime dónde estás.
Well, that's kind of weird. Can you see what's going on here? Well, China does. They run TikTok, and China knows if you want a productive society that extends beyond, say, next week, you teach your kids about hard work and creativity and personal responsibility, respect for authority. But if you want to destroy a society, you funnel a ton of garbage to kids about gender ideology and twerking. As the account Libs of TikTok has documented extensively, that's exactly what TikTok is doing here. There's a whole genre of videos of teachers boasting about indoctrinating kids.
I have had multiple students come out to me, not just with their sexuality, but also with their gender identity. It's one of the reasons I think it's so important to be out and loud and proud.
I teach my elementary school students about gender identity. Some people are girls, some are boys, some are both, some are neither.
I might tell this kid, we do have a flag in the class that you can pledge your allegiance to. And he like looks around and he goes, oh, that one?
Okay, fam, that's
Okay.
enough for right now.
So I have so much to say about that.
I know you do. I was waiting to play this for you because I knew you'd be like,
First of all,
no. Go ahead, fam.
No. First of all, that's not China's fault.
Exactly.
That literally, the United States of America loves that shit. China does not control the videos that become popular in the US at all. In fact, I believe it's an American TikTok, the way it controls and has censored content has been in favor of the West. It hasn't been at all under China's control in those cases. I forget what happened, but there was something where, wasn't it bought or something where it was something happened where it's not even under the control of China at all. Like, because I know for a fact that if I go on TikTok, because I think the Combo Couch has a TikTok, and I posted a few videos where I tried posting them during the what is it, the time where we were following the protests. Anything too political, it literally gets shut down unless it's something like, unless you hide it in a way. It completely gets shut down and restricted. They don't want to see, you don't get to see like the pro-Russian viewpoint. You don't get to see anything remotely like that in the US version of TikTok. You just don't. You don't get to see it. Gordon Dimmick got completely throttled by TikTok. You can talk to him. He's talked about it multiple times. Like, they've pretty much censored all his content and taken it down because it's too political. I mean, he talks about Julian Assange. He talks about a lot of really big, like, truthful things, and that shit gets taken down. TikTok is dominated by the right and the left, meaning the liberals and the Republicans, not the real, like, not any sort of like anti-imperialist left, like, but it's dominated by like the liberals and the conservatives going at each other's throats. So that's why you see all like the stuff, like the culture war stuff on TikTok. But why are you seeing like naked, like, young people and twerking videos on TikTok? Because that's what people want to watch, America. That's what people like. Sorry. That's the society that's been cultivated.
Yep.
But in the United States, I'm so sorry to tell you. Tucker did say a really real thing. In China, they actually value this as, that's the difference. But that's not China's fault.
Yeah.
That's literally our fault.
But how can they blame that on China? Like, this is employee, China's pulling the strings. They're the one who are hypnotizing our kids. No, we're the ones who sexualize, children. Yeah. That's us. Yeah. We do that, the United States. We're the ones who lift up and have this over-the-top love for celebrities who don't do shit or do anything, whatnot. We're the ones who reward just pure, like, capitalist gains and stuff and money gains and don't put into things that are, like, good for society. The Chinese have built their society that way. That's why it's doing. The algorithm is spitting out what the society, how they can keep people's attention and on that platform. Okay? It's our fault. We've done this. This isn't the Chinese and their secret fucking plan. This is so stupid sometimes. It just is. Fam, we're very lucky because we do have some people in Congress fighting for us. AOC is one of them. I'm not going to even play why and stuff like that. I haven't looked into it. Rand Paul is another lawmaker opposing TikTok bill bans. I think it's a mistake. He kind of goes into it. But I also want to play the real awesome Paul. This is our good friend on the Ron Paul Institute. Let's take a look. Fam, I think you're going to like this because you can always count on Ron Paul to fight for freedom of speech. Here we go.
There's a kind of a pathology, I think, kind of a mental illness in America that we feel like we can't survive without an official enemy. And the enemy of the day is China. We have to hate China. Well, there's a social media that I guess is Chinese-owned, TikTok. It's very, very popular with young people. They upload videos of themselves. Well, the U.S. government and the China hawks have identified it as a tool of Chinese intelligence to spy on these kids making these videos. And of course, that makes the NSA jealous because that's their job, to spy on us making videos. So, of course, you create this problem and then you exploit it to take away our liberties, just like, as you say, with the Patriot Act. Of course, we were attacked on 9/11. There should have been a response. But what was the response? It was to restrict our liberties, not to restrict the terrorist liberties. And we found that out, of course, by 2013 when Ed Snowden let us know that they were spying on us. But this bill came to my attention yesterday, and I immediately shared it with you because it brought back a lot of bad memories of the Patriot Act. And thankfully, our friend Jordan Schachtel, who's done some great work, and let's put this up. He's got a great Substack called The Dossier, which we definitely recommend. And he's written about it today. He said the Patriot Act on steroids. The DC Uniparty wants to use anti-TikTok legislation as a Trojan horse for censorship and surveillance. And so, again, they use this manufactured crisis that the Chinese are going to spy on us through TikTok and use it to not just get rid of TikTok. The Restrict Act is for everything. And here's a great little clip that was embedded in Jordan's piece, and it's Ian Cross.
Fam, another Trojan horse. They're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to use this. He hit it perfectly, right? Like they use the 9/11 situation to enforce the Patriot Act, and they tell the people this is to go after and try to catch the terrorists before they can act. But what did they do? They infringed on our civil liberties. They started spying on us. Edward Snowden revealed this. So it's just so ridiculous that they're going to sit there and try to sell you this whole kind of bag of gobbledygook and say that they're enacting these laws in this Restrict Act to try and stop the Chinese from collecting surveillance on us, because that's what you have to stop them doing when they've been doing it for so long. And he even said, that's the NSA job. They've been doing that just for how long, fam? So,
well, it's they're only focused on TikTok because they can use the Chinese spin on it. But really, TikTok, again, like I said, the TikTok already restricts so much intelligent content on its own. And this again, the app is entirely all controlled by the West already. But restricting it is just, as you just mentioned, this idea to try to restrict our rights more, because we're already being spied on by our own government via Facebook, via YouTube, via Instagram, via Snapchat, via Twitter, via literally everything that you can think of, your cell phone, your camera, everything. So right now, Kevin and Kyle are listening in on our conversation. So the reality is, if it was really about spying, like our government's already doing it. The Chinese have, what are they going to spy on? Us, you or your sister or your brother or whatever, watching these twerking videos on TikTok. Like, who cares? Like, that's, if you want to fix that as a conservative and you think that's, that's really shitty that kids are so superficial and they're focused on, superficial things. How about we fix the United States? Because literally that's a reflection of who we are as a society. And if it's a conservative that bothers you, well, then stop your kids from using the internet. You have, as a parent, every right to do that. And I do think there is a problem with the way society is sexualizing kids, with the way society has completely just really become so superficial. But look at who's been our president. I mean, a lot of conservatives don't like to talk about the fact that Donald Trump was a reality TV star. Guys, like, look who we prop up. We do prop up that culture. We are the United States of America. We're Hollywood, And so if that's the main reason why you want to block TikTok, if it's like a societal reason, well, you have control over what your kids view. But if it's because you think the Chinese are spying on you, it's just the excuse they're trying to do to take away your freedoms that you so proudly espouse about, the little freedoms we have left at this point. Because after the war in Iraq, they decided to take away everything. And of course, after what they've admitted, right? They've admitted recently that there were police officers undercover posing as Trump supporters to try to rile up the January 6th rioters and get them to do certain things. We said that when we were at the Capitol. We literally said that. We felt that. We knew what it was in that moment. And now they're admitting that that's what it was. Well, they used that whole shtick to also take away our ability to speak, to oppose the establishment. And this is just another excuse they're using it. But of course, they're not blaming it on the Trump supporter this time. They're blaming it on the Chinese, because they know if they blame it on the Chinese, they can get the right to jump on and say, yeah, it's the Chinese Communist Party coming after us. And tomorrow, they'll go and tell liberals, hey, we need to ban this other person or this other entity because the Russians are coming in and they're influencing XYZ. So what do we get between the liberals and the Republicans? We get to ban everything, and we get to be censored entirely and live in this Western cocoon where we only hear what they tell us to hear, and you still think you have an independent mind?
Yeah.
Nah.
So I got this video really quickly because I know we don't have a ton of time. I got to run off to another show and it's getting really late there, but it is a Trojan horse. Daniel McAdams, who was on the Liberty Report right there, Ron Paul pointed it out. Every time they do this, never let a good crisis go to waste, fam. If you can take away more freedoms from your own citizens while blaming the Chinese or the terrorists, please do so. Take a look at this little TikTok video. He kind of gives a little quick explanation about what is going on and what is actually in the Restrict Act, a bill presented by, Mark Warner, Democrat. Please tell me how the Democrats are better than the Republicans. I don't think you can. Take a listen.
I've been reading the new Restrict Act, aka Senate Bill 686, aka the TikTok ban. And this is a lot worse than I had actually thought it was going to be. You can grab the text yourself from congress.gov, but basically, they can't allow themselves to have access to your home network. That's because this bill also covers wireless local area networks, mobile networks, satellite payloads, satellite operations and control, cable access points, wireline access points, core networking systems, long, short, and backhaul networks, or edge computer platform.
But whoop-de-doo, Basil, what does that mean without the gig speak? Everything. Everything. Everything coming into your house beyond the demarcation point. Everything in my house. They have access to with this law.
They will also have access to any service with greater than 1 million persons, including internet hosting services, cloud-based or distributed computing and data storage, machine learning, predictive analytics and data science products and services, managed services, and content delivery service. Oh, wait! Desktop applications, mobile applications, gaming applications, payment applications, web-based applications, all of these, it's covered.
Your Xbox Live, your PlayStation Network, your Nintendo Switch, everything, your Steam Market, my Twitch, all of it. But by all means, you keep telling me that a VPN or Tor or I2P is going to matter when we're talking about 20 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, and you can't access all the rest of the infrastructure because they got it covered A to Z. Contact your politicians. This is a blatant violation of our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, in addition to the constitutional rights.
Fam, they're going deep in the paint, and just, they're kind of billing it too, as once again looking at foreign adversaries that they can go in and make sure they can block at any time. And they tell you right over here, the term covered holding means regardless of how or when such holding will be obtained or otherwise come into be have held, a controlling holding held directly or indirectly in ICTS, covered holding entity by a foreign adversary. And down over here, they list a lot of the foreign adversaries. If you just go down, the People's Republic of China, including Hong Kong, Special Administration Region, because now Hong Kong is under the control of Beijing, the Republic of Cuba, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the Russian Federation, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela under the regime of Nicolas Maduro. Fam, they're making sure they add everything into this bill, and they're putting it off as if it's foreign entities coming after us, listing those foreign entities because they just want to take away more of your freedoms and more of your rights so they can see what you're doing, because the greatest threat to the empire is its citizens itself, and they know
it's
that.
you.
Yes.
It's you. But if they can keep you propagandized and talking about, trans issues left and right, then yeah. I mean, that's literally all people fight about nowadays. So it's like, oh, keep doing it. Keep talking about it. Meanwhile, your country is falling apart. And that's that. So,
Yep. Fam, that's it for today. I'm going to read a few more super race because we do have some in the tank over here. Aram, go ahead, fam. You can read that one. I'm going to grab the other one real quick.
Aaron, we love you. Love the fire, love the truth, short, sweet, to the point, towards health and strength and daily food. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aram, for being a fam.
Always being a fan. We love you, Aram, and thank you to everybody else as well who leaves these Super Ray contributions or who helped as well get me to Cuba by throwing some love my way. I hope I came back with some information for you. Really, to tell you the truth, like I said, why it opened up, there's no place like Cuba. It's very, very different. It's its own unique situation, but it's under its own unique sanctions. So there's a lot food for information. There's food for thought. And go ahead, fam, you got another one right here.
There are multiple. This is from Amber King. TikTok bills, all bullshit. HR 1165, Senate 686, Restrict Act, Senate 1143. No TikTok on Government Devices Act. Please help end all of these. HTTP :// I'm assuming is. She has a link there.
She has an address. I wouldn't be able to get the whole thing in there, but she can, if you want to go see that website, please go.
Maybe somebody can put it in the chat.
I'll go grab it right now and I'll put it in the very end. But here's another one, fam, from Cam Shwari Kate.
Nice to see you, Cam Shwari Kate. You have no idea how much I appreciate Fam Pasta and Oz and Shanda. The chat is excellent. Love this fam. We love you guys, by the way. I have a comment from Terry Madsen, who streams Thursdays. WTF is happening in Latin America, so she'll be here tomorrow. But she says our chat is amazing. She loves interacting with the chat. That's why she loves going live. And you guys are amazing, just so you know, like whenever you are in a chat, you're the smartest chat. And you guys, like when I go on other shows as chats, I'm just like, no offense to other shows, but you guys are the smartest and we love you guys. Pacheco Ron tipped 5. Thanks, Pasta Fiorella and Wyatt. Thank you, Pacheco. Yeah, should we change Pasta's name to Pasta Pacheco? I like that.
By the way, this is the a link that Amber King put on up there, guys. If you want to go on there and grab it, please do.
Oh, shut up, DC. You sound like Pasta saying I'm not affectionate. You guys know I love you.
And maybe you should take it.
Especially DC. DC knows I love. We have a love-hate relationship.
Dude,
so it's
DC started the fucking socialist caucus in the Libertarian Party. He is my boy. I love DC. I love his thoughts. I love his mindset. I love the fact he's always here to support
I would
us.
love the Socialist Libertarian Caucus if we could just kick off the Libertarian part of it.
Why? The Libertarian part of it is the most important in my mind because it talks about, I get the leftist Libertarian part, the Socialist Libertarian part to me. The socialism is about the economics. That's why I do not agree with the Libertarians with their form of compassionate capitalism, that the free market's going to work itself out. The reason why I'm so invested in getting elections straight is because I believe the state should control things, that corporations shouldn't control things. I don't believe that corporations should control natural resources that are very beneficial and important to the people, like water. Nestle should never be able to control water. That should be controlled by the state at the behest, as long as we have a method and a system that can get us actual civil servants. You know, the Chinese model is pretty freaking good. You know, Nicaragua's done stuff like that. Vietnam is doing shit like that. This free market socialism is really, I think, the way forward in a lot of things. But the United States, the capitalists, they want the free market, and the libertarians want this too, to own everything. And the thought process is that if you remove the government's overreaching control, that the corporations are going to somehow, with competition there, have everything work itself out. That competition is the solution for everything. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I do believe there should be a free market in certain areas, most areas, and I believe there should be controlled stuff that is controlled by the people, the state. And if you have governments that you like and governments that you think are working at the behest of the people, you can obtain those things. And that's why I am for that form of government.
This is another discussion for another day. But apparently I'm Russian because I don't show the chat enough affection, but chat, I love you. And let's see. Russians are actually really nice, and Russians are affectionate once you get to know them. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Um,
This is by Baba Yaga
uh,
for East. Go ahead. EST tips.
Baba
Sorry.
Yaga Forest.
Yes.
Independent media needs to stay strong and find other ways of communication. Ham radio and such. Stand together. Ham radio. Shit, we're going back old school. Damn, ham radio. But yeah, so you guys, if you guys want to see more like, normal conversations, we could have a show where Pasta and I just like do like 20 questions for the chat. We could do one of those shows for you guys because we haven't done anything like that in a long time. But also we can have Pasta twerk, because Pasta, one of the most commented things before we leave that I have to say is that Pasta is a great dancer. Now, I said on Twitter, Pasta is a better dancer than 90% of the white men I know. So at least, I mean, he's up there. He can shake them hips. He's a really great dancer. Fam, everybody loved your dancing, and I commend you on your dancing. Okay.
Fam, first of all, you're lying when you say about 90% of the men that you know, white men that you know. I'm at least, the lowest figure should be probably 95%, because I dance better than most white men that you know, and that's just a fact. Want proof?
He is doing the most basic step, but he's doing it well. Okay, let's leave it at that. Hey, Pasta dances better than Johnny Tsunami. Although Johnny, when Johnny was little, he used to be really shy, and like he wouldn't. My parents would always try to get him to dance, and he would run away. But as he got older, he started dancing more, and then he started wanting to learn like the cultural dances of Peru, which is like really hard. And I don't know what the hell he did, but he like picked up one where you're literally, it's almost like country line dancing but Peruvian, and you're literally, no, country line dancing with Irish dancing mixed together, because you're like stepping your foot down or whatever. Anyway, Johnny knows how to do that really well. But in terms of like hip motion, Pasta's better than Johnny, and Johnny is brown. So you can tell my brother when you talk to him later that that I said you can dance better than him. You can dance better than my father. My father has 2 left feet. He cannot dance. So
That's right. So that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for all the Super Ray contribution. That thing is awesome. And like I said, thank you so much for getting me to Cuba. You guys know who you are out there. Thank you, man. It was a world to me, and I hope we got able to get a perspective and bring it back to you that might not be seen everywhere else. I think that fam will tell you. I mean, that is my gift is I can talk to people, I can embrace people, I can get to know them. And when we go to these countries, we talk to the everyday people. I'm sure I can go talk to a bunch of activists and people who are Viva la Revolucion, or people who are just dead set against the isms or the communism or whatever the case may be. But I like to talk to the actual people on the ground. And when you get a perspective from the people who are actually on the ground and they live in these situations, you get a whole different view of what's going on. So I was able to bring that to you guys. And I wrote a little bit of article. I'm going to put it out in a day or two. But it was an amazing trip. And I think, fam, that me personally, I think that fam promised us a pasta twerk. I hope that I continue this relationship and I continue to go to Cuba. For some reason, I am just more drawn to Cuba than any other country I went to, maybe other than Nicaragua, which I'd love to go back to. But I mean, Cuba, it's pretty fucking awesome. And it's a very interesting time. Like I said, Castro had just moved on not too long ago. This is a whole new government, a whole new time, a whole new world. So my eyes and ears and my heart is open to Cuba. And I am very optimistic and hopeful for the future, because I hate to see unnecessary suffering. It's the thing I hate most. It's what drives me every day. It's what, really gets my blood boiling. It's unnecessary suffering. There's enough food, shelter. We can have it all for enough people on this place to all live a comfortable, enjoyable life. So when I see unnecessary suffering, I want to identify what it is, how it happened, and more importantly, how we fight back against it and push back against it, so we can all live in some happiness in this fucking globe, in this place over here, fam.
Okay. Peace, guys, and yeah, Argentina is coming up in October, I believe, or November.
Yeah.
There's the pre. I think it's in April. What is it? There's the general election is later on. I think it's October or November. But
October,
there's
I believe it's October. And there's also Guatemala that I'd like to look into. Some shit's going down in Guatemala. We had some connections in Guatemala. Some people we met actually in Honduras are in Guatemala. So I'm going to reach out to them and see what's going on. They left the indigenous candidates off the ballot because that's another form of election fraud. So
Yeah.
you can't fix the election itself, but if I can leave people off the ballot, right, then I have a better chance of winning. Plus, I have all my propaganda because I control all the media. So there's other forms of election fraud out there, and that's what's going on in Guatemala. So I'd like to see what's going on. But first, we got Cuba May Day. Hopefully, Fam and I will be over there covering Cuba for May Day. And in June, I think it's June 3rd and 4th. I don't want to say it right now. And I'll make sure I'll have the advertising coming forth. I'm going to be speaking with Steve and a couple of the people in the Truther community in Tennessee, where T-Lab, Courtney, Scott Armstrong is throwing this whole event. Mel K will be there. Susie Colgan Orson, who's Colgan Olgan, I forget her name, whatever, Susie, her name is. She's an activist. We met her in D.C. at the Defeat the Mandates. So that's going to be an event, and I'll be talking about that as well. There's a lot on the docket and a lot more work to be done. And I can't thank you guys enough out there for really doing this for us. Me and Fam love doing this. This is the longest I've ever had in my life, and I can't thank you guys enough.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you guys later. Combo out.
Oh, she said it.